the end. So let's understand very quickly what is the difference. Next. We're going to see the differences between dirt, soil, compost, and mulch. So when you say I have dirt, basically dirt is dead. There are no living organisms in it, nutrients and minerals, organic matter. There's no fertility, no soil structure. It doesn't retain water and it doesn't have proper drainage. So that's the kind of condition that are the less suitable for plants. Next. Now, comparing dirt to soil, soil is alive. It has everything that dirt lacks, right? So it has abundant life, it's nutrient rich, it has proper aeration, and it has all the beneficial organisms in there. So with that being said, next, basically, soil is the complete opposite of dirt. You know, it has similar mineral contents in there, but soil is the foundation for any garden area or any ecosystem that you're trying to enhance, promote, or recreate, restore. Next. So now where compost comes in. Compost, it's also alive and it's a way to boost the soil life. So by making your own good compost or purchasing high quality compost, you are improving the soil food web, which is crucial in any kind of soil setting. That doesn't even matter what you have. Like if you don't have your soil food web fully operating and in order and in sync, it makes it really hard to have all of the nutrients and minerals accessible because they can be present, but they may not be fully accessible because all of the um, beneficial organisms and microorganisms in the soil are not fully functional as far as it goes with the complete soil food web. So compost also helps retaining, improving nutrients levels and water retention, and it gives that great, good-looking soil structure and also proper drainage for the grounds. Next. And then, of course, we do have mulch, which is a organic option to help with retaining available water, reducing evaporation, soil erosion. It helps suppressing weeds, and it also helps moderating soil temperature, other than obviously making our garden and planting areas looking very, very pretty. Next. So we will start learning, understanding a little bit more about mulch. Next. You're gonna hear me saying a lot of nexts, by the way. I hope you enjoy my Brazilian accent. So benefits of mulching, which could be considered a way of covering the grounds, right? A ground cover. It helps with all the visual appeal in your landscape design. It also promotes water retention in the soil, which means less irrigation, erosion control, weed suppressing, soil temperature moderation, enhances the biodiversity in your garden as well. And we're talking about, pollinators, insect activity, and obviously the soil food web. And it reduces maintenance as well because you may not be pulling weeds too much. You may not be having to irrigate the soil as often as you would if you didn't have any mulch, especially in the hot seasons. It's always crucial to keep hold the moisture in the ground. Next. So there are basically three categories of mulching. Mulching, considering that it's a ground covering, you have organic options, which are, wood chips, tree bark, leaves, and straw, and they can be either grinded or chipped from a raw living organic material. So you get that shredded or chunked consistency. Next. Now you also have inorganic options, which are not derived from living sources or organic matter. Those are your rocks and gravels, pebbles, maybe a rubber mulch, landscape fabric, and plastic sheet. Next. And you also have options of having a living mulch. That goes with keeping the soil active, adding color and companion plantings as well. It is a great option to choose perennial plants so they come back year after year. And just a few examples of things you can explore, just like in that picture there, you have the stepping stones and the flowers right in between. But some good examples are frog fruit, dwarf chamomile, creeping thyme, hairy vetch, and chickweed. So with mulching, I wanted to start from there because all of the work you're doing from soil and compost to enrich your soils, you're going to have to finalize the job, let's put it that way, by selecting what kind of ground cover or what kind of mulching strategy you're going to have in place. So that's it starts with thinking about mulching because to me, most of the times is how do I want to have it looking like when it's done. So that's my last step, mulching and getting everything in place. So before I get to my last step, I want to make sure I develop build soil and composting well together. Because once I get to cover it, it's almost like it's the icing on the cake, right? Next. Okay, so about soil now. Soil is the foundation. It's extremely important. It's the foundation of any garden, any ecoregion, ecosystem. Like without soil, there's really nothing that can happen healthy and properly because it is the anchorage for all of the roots of plants. They eat, drink, and breathe through the root systems, which is in the soil. Soil also holds water, nutrients, and organic matter, and it's a home of a variety of microorganisms, microscopic bacteria, earthworms, and minor insects. That's part of the soil food web, all the protozoas, fungi, um, nematodes, beneficial nematodes. So all of that stuff, it's in your soil. It's happening, it's alive, and it's active right now. So you want to make sure you keep your soil that way. Also, soil helps absorbing and infiltrating rainwater, which helps in flood prevention. And it obviously provides a beautiful planting area where you can grow all kinds of different gardens, promoting and providing human yield products or food and shelter for plants and wildlife. So you can, because just a quick example is you can have your vegetable garden at home, but you can have a pollinator garden. You're trying to, promote that aspect of, maybe working a Texas native garden to increase butterfly population. So you're going to need healthy plants that bloom, that are um, behaving accordingly to its right season of the year. And for that, soil has to be the foundation always. Next. So then just a quick note, in suburban areas, you probably imagine what I'm about to say, but it was before it became your house, it was a construction site. So you see a lot of compaction and contamination. You see altered nutrient cycling, modified soil structure. It impacts all the plant growth and overall ecosystem's health. So basically, think about there was an open lot, and with all the earthworks, everything that was naturally there before, it got completely turned upside down, right? So now your house is there, is looking good, and you have to rework all the soil around. I just want y'all to keep that in mind because it is something, it depends if if you just build a house, or it's good to know the history of the site to understand better about soil there. So you may be in the same property for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So you know your soil a lot better. So there is that building a relationship with the soil you have available in your property. And maybe in the past it was a farmland, so you can kind of like track down if there were any chemicals and pesticides that were used, or what kind of crops they used to grow over there, or maybe it was just a untouched woodlands, that they had to take a bunch of trees down in order to build the housing um, establishment, the neighborhood and all. So keep that in mind that in suburban areas specifically, knowing what it was before will help you a lot to determine what are the next steps and the strategies to build healthy soils. Next. So let's go through a description. Oh, you can go ahead, Blake. So just so we understand a little more now, we're going to see a few items about soil. The first one is what is the ideal soil composition? You can tell by the image that like half of it is water and air. And it makes a lot of sense because all the microbial activity in the soil and all plants, they will need water and oxygen in the soil. And you see how 45% are all the mineral particles. That's your phosphorus, I'm sorry, calcium, magnesium, iron. So all that stuff that it's in the soil already, it's about 45%. So we're playing with organic matter. It's about 5% of the whole pie in the soil composition. And that's what we are working harder to make achieve the highest quality as we can to activate everything else, the air, the water present, the oxygen, and the minerals that are there as well. So in that organic matter portion with the minerals, half of it, of that pizza slicing, half are going to be all your nutrients and minerals in the soil. Next. So a quick thing you can do to find out soil texture in North Texas is basically made from minerals such as rocks, gravel, sand, clay, and silt. So that picture right there shows you a pint mason jar where you can do it's called a shake test. You can go to your yard right now and dig a small hole about 6 inches wide by 6 inches deep and scrape the side wall inside of the hole, put it in a jar with water about 2/3 of the full capacity, and you shake it like you really mean it. Leave it resting at your counter for maybe a day or two, and you will be able to see those layers. And using this picture as a reference to help you as well, you will be able to determine if you have a good balanced loam combination of between clay, silt, and sand, or if your soil is leaning more leaning towards more of a loamy clay soil or a sandy loam soil. That alone already helps you to understand if you ever, whenever it's time to add organic matter or amend the soil, knowing if you have more of a sandy or a clay soil determines as well strategies that you can take to fix or enhance or enrich that soil around your property. Next. Now, another thing that you probably heard about a lot is soil pH. So it's there, it's present, and it determines the availability of almost all of the essential plant nutrients. So number 7 is a neutral between 6.5 and 7.5. It's the highest availability of all of those minerals and nutrients in the soil already. A quick reference, for most vegetables, your pH number is always going to be between 6 and 8 as an optimal soil pH. And on that picture as well, you see the number 7 is right in the middle of that table, of that chart. And you see from all of the different minerals that are in the soil, minerals and nutrients, that right about that neutral number, a little up, a little higher to acidic or alkaline soil, is where you have bigger amounts of those minerals and nutrients available and accessible for the plant. So it make sense, like if you're planting blueberries in the ground, they like a little more of a acidic soil. That's because they enjoy a lot more of iron, manganese, and zinc more than all the other plants. So knowing your plant and what kind of soil it prefers, it will help you to, as you're building that soil quality, you're also monitoring soil pH. Next. And then the last thing that I want y'all to understand is called soil horizon. And basically, it's super obvious. You've probably seen this before as well. But once you keep in mind that all the way down from the bedrock going up, like you're going for a very, big particles, big pieces, rough material from bedrock up. So going from the bedrock into a parental material, then into your subsoil, then topsoil, than organic layers. So when we're gardening at home, we're actively working with the organic layer and the topsoil, but everything we do to enrich that portion of the horizon of the soil. As over time, as it breaks down, it keeps seeping and permeating down into the subsoil up into the parent material. So what you want to do is obviously make sure that the first 12 to 16, 20 inches of the ground, the soil where you're planting, it has a much higher quality soil. So you can fully have that peace of mind that you have an amazing area to plant what you desire, but also knowing that in time, all that material is going to break down and still enrich the lower levels in the horizon. Next. Now, nutrients, again, like I'm trying to give you all this information. So when you step outside, you're going to look at the soil in your gardens and you'll be like, huh, I got it now. Because check this out, plants uptake essential nutrients from the soil through their root systems. Remember, we kind of mentioned that before, but that's always valid to keep in mind. And right under the picture, you see the NPK are the primary nutrients. And those are like when you buy at the big box stores, when you buy a soil amendment and you have like three numbers in a row with a dash or a hyphen in between, that basically by standard represents what are the levels of NPK, and for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, and K for potassium. And they all have a very specific function in the soil as well. Nitrogen is always one that you're going to hear a lot because it's basically the power boost for the plants, whereas phosphorus helps with limb growth, winter hardness, and seed formation, and potassium, use of water, drought tolerance, and enhances the yield size and quality if you're planting anything edible or stone fruit trees and things like that. But now you see that by understanding those levels of nutrients present in your soil, now you can tell if it's missing or lacking anything, or if it has too much of another one. Now you're working it all out, benefiting not just the plant life in your garden, but also you notice that by having a well-balanced nutrient mineral level in the soil, it helps a lot with conserving water as well, because now the soil is able to hold that water in place just enough for the optimum health of any plants you have. Next. So very quick to mention here some amendments. Amending the soil basically means you're adding specific nutrients according to what your plant selection needs. And see, you can buy those NPK products from big box stores. You may have a favorite one, but I did put here some organic options. Compost is always going to be my first choice, best soil conditioner ever. But you can use expanded shale to help breaking down clay in the soil, coffee grounds. It has levels of NPK, but it also has other micronutrients and trace minerals. Ash, from your fire pit, is rich in calcium and it helps neutralizing acidic soil. So say if your soil is too acidic and you try to bring up back into closer to neutral, adding wood ash over time will slowly bring the soil pH level up. Or eggshells, when you crush them, they are also a great source of calcium for your tomato plants. And bone meal that are rich in phosphorus, and you can find a liquid form of it for spraying or pellets that you can mix in with the soil, and it's more of a slow release. Or even fish emulsion is also a great phosphorus source, and that's mostly in liquid form. And horticulture molasses, not the cooking molasses, the horticulture molasses, it's a great food source for all of the beneficial soil microbes present in your gardens. Next. And then soil test is very important. Like I bet you know that you can get your soil tested. This is a form from the AgriLife extension. It's a urban and homeowner soil sample information. You can easily find that online. It's super affordable. I always suggest to selecting more than just one testing spot in your garden. So from that test, it will tell you what are the levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and you have actually options where you can just pay a little more for a much higher and more valuable analysis for maybe the levels of the different minerals in the soil, or metals, or even chemicals that could be in your soil. So that's available for you, and I would suggest you take advantage of that. Next. So now we're getting to compost. Okay, so you're supposed to get super inspired by understanding first that in nature decomposition naturally happens, right? So whatever the way it happens naturally in nature, man got all those efficient insights of how it goes and understood how it happens naturally and turned into compost. So compost is man-made, decomposition is nature made. So natural decomposition process of organic matter that turns organic matter into a rich soil conditioner. So now you are intentionally um, stimulating decomposition to make compost and put it back in your gardens to add up to your existing soil. Next. So I like to compare it into with a cooking process, which you're going to have a recipe to follow. You're going to have a composting method that you chose, and you're going to be able to monitor temperature, increasing or decreasing temperature until the right time to judge that if it's ready. It's basically the same as baking. You're following a recipe, you're baking, you know the temperature that your oven needs to be, and you can finish the bread. You can take the bread out before or after it because it's not going to have the right texture, consistency, and color into it. So I like comparing to a cooking process. Next. So in order to cook, you will need, now think about this. This is really cool. Sun and shade, moisture and water, oxygen, microorganisms, activity, and organic matter. So it's the exact same thing that soil needs to have its optimal health. Is the same thing that you're based on when you are making your own compost. So there is a formula right there at the bottom right, a very simple one, which basically is carbon plus nitrogen equals to decomposition. So simplifying it, we're going to call it brown and green materials. That's a combination of those two will give you compost ready to use. Next. So quick benefits about composting. There are many, many, many great benefits out there. I just did highlighted a few that it says promote healthier plant growth, improves soil health, retains more water, reduces landfill waste, and reduces the need of synthetic fertilizers. All of that because you have high quality soil that you added high quality compost to it. So you're creating the most extreme optimal environment for any plant life or any garden style that you have. Next. Now, a few drawbacks from composting, and then again, there are a few more in there that are listed, but I highlighted that it may require a initial investment because you may have to buy either a structure, a tumbler, or a composting bin, or just make a big mound. It can cause unpleasant smell if it's misconducted, and it usually involves physical labor. So meaning if you want to compost, you're going to have at some point, beginning, middle, or end of the process, it will require you to go to your composting operation and perform some sort of labor. There are strategies that require a little more labor, a little less, and we will see a little more about that as well. But I do want to highlight here that if you are composting properly and not rotting any materials, you should have no bad smell noticeable going on. Next. So a great strategy that I suggest, it's called lasagna garden. If you never heard about that before, it's basically an above ground system. So you're buying yourself time by not trying to change fully the existing soil in your property, but you are going above ground. And as that system breaks down and decomposes together, you are starting to work at the original soil levels on the ground as well. So basically, what you're doing is you're alternating green and brown materials. I would always suggest to start the bottom layer with a brown material, and it could be a cardboard. You probably heard about sheet mulching and having that cardboard there to help suppressing grasses and weeds. But the top layer, the very top of that mound, that lasagna mound, it's a brown material that could be either a planting compost or a planting soil, depending on the garden style you're going with. But then you finish with mulch material. So now does it make sense? See, like you're building layers between green and brown materials to have, high quality soil in the future or in a shorter period of time, but you still have to finalize the system. It's the same thing as mulching your front yard. After you've done all the soil work, planted everything, you mulch everything. Next. Now, one suggestion that I can give you is like once you finish the lasagna garden, remember your top layer is where you're going to plant and you're covering everything with your finishing layer. So basically, you can do like in this example here, when planting, I use straw as mulch, not necessarily wood mulch from the stores. And what you can do with mulch as well, you just dig a planting spot through the straw or the mulch until you see the compost or the planting soil at the bottom. Then you can add soil just in that little spot and you can plant seeds or plant your transplants. And I also, so meaning like you can build the lasagna garden system and not miss the planting season. So you're planting, you can plant it right away, but only after 1 year, I will suggest that you plant perennial plants because you keep in mind that you put a lasagna garden together over time, it keeps breaking down and reducing in volume. So you don't want to put anything perennial there within the first year. So you're playing with most of seasonals and annual plants to begin the system. Then the second year on, you can plant whatever you desire to. Next. So observing and preparing, plan ahead of time. Like, so now if you got excited to start your compost pile at home, if you don't have one already, you're going to have to pick the right location and the right method that works for your lifestyle, for your garden size, and how much you are committed into getting, making your compost the right way. So you are evaluating all the convenient location, and you're tracking down all the available materials as well, either daily, weekly, monthly, or throughout the seasons. And add that list into your calendar. So you have your own programming and calendar for your week. Kids soccer games on Saturday mornings or dinner with mom on Monday evenings. So add the availability of those materials into your calendar as well, so you know exactly when to collect what at the right time. And keep in mind that you may have to store some of the material, which means that you are already predicting that you may need extra space. So identifying right there on the blue box what can be used in your compost pile and when. Mowing seasons, let's just think through this very quickly. Mowing season, you have a lot of grass clippings. Fall season, you have a lot of leaves falling from the trees. Pruning season, you have branches, twigs, and other plant prunings and trimmings. Seasonal harvest, like say if you have your vegetable gardens, I put bed produce as an example of something that maybe you were harvesting too late and it was not, decent, good enough for you to consume it. Or even any decayed plants, something that you planted as a annual or a seasonal and you harvested the portion of the plant that you wanted to eat, or you're trimming dry twigs and branches from after the heat of the summer. Now, weeds can also go into your compost pile, and I did put hot compost over there. We will see a little more about that as well. But seeds, the one trick I always suggest is seeds are plants just like any other one. They just grow a lot faster and create competition for your desirable plants. Now, if you're watching your weeds, they're first bloomers. They're great for early season pollination for honeybees, especially, and native bees. But if you are watching those weeds and they're flowering, before those flowers dry and they produce seeds, you go ahead and cut them off and put it in your compost pile. So you're not putting fully formed seeds in your compost pile. Does it make sense? Now, home office papers, if you have a shredder, it became pretty big after 2020 when everybody had to stay home for the longest time. So home office was very popular. And cardboard from deliveries. Um, I always take all the tapes off of my cardboard. I don't want none of the tape and the glue that it's in there in my compost pile. And of course, your daily kitchen scraps, things you eat that you cut off, and all of that stuff can go into your compost pile. Next. Just a couple of strategies that I want you to understand. The real workers in the composting is that your compost pile goes through temperature stages. It's a aerobic environment. And I mentioned over there the fire pit example. Think about you have your fire pit going. When you blow on it, you increase oxygenation, aerobic system, your fire gets hotter and bigger, right? So a similar insight when you work in your compost pile. And in your compost pile, you have different groups of microorganisms that they are more active according to the temperature in your compost pile. And they like water, oxygen, and carbon and nitrogen. So isn't that cool that whatever the microorganisms in the soil need to stay alive and healthy are the exact same things that soil needs to be healthy, and are the exact same things that compost needs to decompose properly. So I like to show you that it's there are many elements within restoring grounds or building healthy soils, but they all need the same thing. Next. So again, I bring you back that formula of the brown and green materials. In this time, you noticed I highlighted the C for carbon and the N for nitrogen. This is something that if you go online, I hope you have a lot of patience and curiosity, because if you put carbon to nitrogen ratio on your computer on Google, you can go to town. You're going to spend the whole weekend. It's sometimes it's worse than trying to start your own Pinterest board. You spend your whole weekend in there. Next. Now, the ideal ratio that you're often going to find is a 30-1, 30 parts of carbon to 1 part of nitrogen. And I'll tell you what, you can totally become a compost scientist. And there are that carbon to nitrogen ratio. It's different for many different materials, say like vegetable scraps, kitchen scraps are around a 17-1 ratio. Leaves are a 75-1. Manure is a lot higher. So meaning you can totally play around with the carbon to nitrogen ratio. But the way I found out in our operation here, where I work for 15 years, we're self-sustainable in composting for at least 12 years now. And we manage all of the organic matter for from 41 acres that we have here. And we had to find a way to define a measuring cup when we're preparing our compost pile. So in our case here, our measuring cup is the Bobcat bucket, our tractor bucket. But at home, depending on the size of your gardens and how much, after you measured available materials, how much you have generating in your house seasonally that you can take out to your compost pile. So you can have a 5-gallon bucket or a kitchen bowl, and their relation is by weight. And I'll tell you just a quick, super easy example is if you get a 5-gallon bucket of grass clippings, you gotta, by weight, you gotta find the same weight with, say, like dry leaves, shredded dry leaves from your backyard. Instead of just raking the leaves, you mow over, you shred them all. You could leave them on the lawn for the winter. It would just help with soil nutrition when spring comes. But some people have a lot of trees, so it is beneficial to, as you're mowing, shredding the leaves, you're bagging everything, and you will take like 3 5-gallon buckets to have about the same weight as one 5-gallon bucket of fresh grass clippings. So you still that combination between grass clippings and dry leaves combined together by weight, the way I explained to y'all, it's really close to that 30-to-1 ideal compost to nitrogen ratio. So simplifying a little more. Next. First strategy, the smaller the particles, the faster it will decompose. So anything that you put in your compost pile, if it's chopped or grinded, it will decompose a lot faster. Next. And this is where I can explain to you some easier tricks between hot composting and cold composting. Starting from the top with hot composting, you can get a lot faster results. The thermophilic stage is the microbial group that is operating there, and your pile will be 100 degrees Fahrenheit and up. But for hot composting, it does require a lot more turning your pile labor. Remember the fire pit again? Once you put your lasagna garden in the shape of your compost pile, whatever method you chose, it will generate heat. And every time you turn that pile, you're basically aerating or adding oxygen into your pile, and you will create temperature spikes again. So you can turn your pile like every 2 to 3 days, and you could possibly have compost ready in a month. So for that, using your measuring buckets, your measuring cup, a 2 buckets of carbon to 1 bucket of nitrogen, it would be a great ratio for hot composting. Now, when you go to cold composting, right below that square right there, that box, you go to cold composting, which you will get slower results in decomposition. Mesophilic stage is the name of the group of microbes over there. And you see how the temperature changes is a 60 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit as far as temperature in your compost pile. So yes, sure enough, you're going to turn your pile a lot less. You can turn it every 2 to 3 weeks, and you could potentially have a bunch of compost ready in 3 months. So you see that picture that just popped up over there, the core of the pile. That's a compost thermometer. It's basically an oversized turkey thermometer, and that's how it will help you to measure the temperature in your compost pile. At the bottom, you see there is a line saying that from 150 to 160, it will kill most weed seeds, harmful bacteria, pathogens, parasites, and diseases in your compost pile. It may kill some beneficial microbes as well, but you're only going to get to a temperature that high if you choose to do hot composting. Next. Now, when your compost is ready, you have two forms of compost. When you get it out of your pile, I call it rough compost because it still has small pieces of branches and twigs, but they're great to use for flower beds and trees. Now, if you're going for edible crops or vegetables, I would always suggest to sift your compost first. There's a picture right there with a good example of how to sift your compost. Basically, a wood frame with the metal mesh, and it's in an angle where as you're running your shovel down, whatever falls behind the mesh, it's nice, good looking sifted compost. Next. And also after you've done all of that preparation, you got your compost ready, it's always advised to store it in a aerated closed container. So it can be a perforated bag or maybe just a trash can with the lid, make some holes on the top portion of the trash can, not the lid itself, but the trash can. So you keep air flowing, but you have all that compost ready. What you don't want to do is harvest your compost and just leave it out there sitting in the open for the longest time, because you're never going to be able to tell if wind or birds brought some surprise seeds, let's put it that way, into your compost pile. And then you put that compost in the soil, you have all kinds of stuff sprouting out of it, and you have no idea what it is. Next. So in your this is just a list of materials. You got to add materials that you are comfortable with. This will be as a reference for you because obviously we don't have time to go through every single item over there. But you see at the bottom right, there is a black rectangle with the caption for all of those letters. And you're basically breaking it down into wet materials and dry materials and materials that I would not suggest you put it in your compost pile. Some of them are very, very obvious, like rubber, plastic, metal, and styrofoam. That's stuff to go to recycling, right, in your neighborhood. Now, there is also a mentioning about which materials do perform better in hot composting or cold composting, and even things that contain chemicals and synthetic products or other stuff that may attract critters into your compost pile. But I'll give you, like, within the yes brown, yes green, no compost list, I would just mention that there are some very crazy, surprising items over there. For example, your dryer lint can totally go to your compost pile. But just keep in mind, when you're washing your clothes, do you have, lycra or nylon that you're drying up? Because those are petroleum based, right? So you may have traces of plastic material. That's what you don't want to put in your compost pile. Now, if you're only drying up your 100% cotton clothes, sure enough, that dryer lint can go into your compost pile. So you can certainly go back into the recording and look at that list and kind of like explore it a little bit more. Next. So we're getting to the end right here, guys, and this is when it's super fun. We're going to start looking at some methods and styles. Starting at number 1 on the top left, this is called a compost windrow. Basically, it's a pyramid shape mound, and it's in a shape of a big long row. Like, it doesn't have to be super long, but you can have more than one as well. And it's called windrow because when you have one pile next to each other, it creates a wind current in between those piles. Now, remember that when you have oxygen, adding oxygen into your pile, it helps increasing the temperature in the pile. So this is a great option either for cold or hot composting, but it's a great option if you have a ton of materials. That's actually the style that I do over here at Global Sphere Center, where I work at in Corinth, Texas. Now, if we go to number 2, you see there, these are called compost bays. It's a more contained, structured display, and it has 3 areas where you can use one for greens, one for browns, and you store it just a little, like in 1, 2, 3 days, boom, you start mixing it. So meaning you have a way to contain all those available materials between green and brown for your compost pile. And also, if you start in the first bay, you start your lasagna garden there, you can just turn it to the next base and so on and so forth. Number 3 over there is a plastic bin that is more of a cold composting method because it's going to be really hard to turn the compost in there. Whereas number 4 is the tumbler. You're rolling that tumbler all the way. I will always start with lasagna garden. You see number 5, the wire bins. You can definitely tell the different colors in there. And next. And just in this page, like number 1 here, the good old trenching method. I always suggest you go for sure deeper than 16 inches in the soil. This is a great way of prepping grounds for the future, but you don't want all of that organic matter too close to the surface because other critters will probably decide that you didn't dig that hole too deep and they will expose everything to you again. Number 2 is a hugelkultur gardening. In that picture, you see those circles in the middle of the pile. Those are tree trunks that will absorb a lot of water over time, at least 4 seasons in a row. And it's also an above ground system in a berm shape where you can plant all kinds of stuff. It's considered a low irrigation gardening method by having those big chunks of wood in the core of your planting area. Number 3 is called a spiral garden. That's also a way to not only keep working as you're prepping your lasagna garden soil built method into any of those methods. The spiral garden is a great style to also a contained area. It works great for a spiral herb garden, by the way. But when you irrigate it, you irrigate it from a central point, and all the runoff water or excess water runs down in a spiral, and you can manipulate plants that like more water, less water, morning sun, afternoon sun, all in one location. Number 4 is a keyhole garden, And that is a way where you can put that garden all the way up to be a lot more comfortable, so you're not bending on your knees all the time. And you fill that thing up with a lot of brown materials, carbon materials, dry, and you just top it off with your planting soil. That center right there, it looks like a straw pipe. That's your compost bin right there in the middle. So in there, you can bring your materials for composting, greens and browns, putting it together as a lasagna garden method. As everything breaks down, it leaches out a fluid called compost liquid. Some people call it compost tea as well, but that is absorbed by the brown materials in the inside of the keyhole garden. That breaks everything down and just keeps building great soil quality for the future. Number 5, tire garden. I just had to put it there because there are some fun ways that people will use to prepare their compost. My only thing about it is, one, if you don't like the looks, right? Or number 2 is there are all kinds of debates about, is the tire going to keep the garden too hot, or is it going to release any kind of chemical material in there? And I'm sure it does, but in reality, say I personally wouldn't plant anything that I would like to eat. But that's a good way of having a contained area to prep your compost. Number 6 right there, bottom right, it's a bokashi bucket. It's a little more towards fermentation, but you have your compost accelerator. It's a great method for small spaces. And it also has a little spigot over there where you can drain the liquid fertilizer that comes from that fermentation, from the composting. And number 7 here, vermiculture with earthworms, right? That's called a worm tower. All those layers are different baskets that are stackable, and you can have your own vermicompost or worm castings at home. Great for small spaces as well. It just needs to be in a dry, away from the sun area so you don't cook the earthworms. Number 8, goats are always big time. They're natural lawnmowers. As they're grazing, they're stomping the ground and, eating and fertilizing, if you know what I mean. And whatever they leave behind, they're stepping over and turning into the soil. And then, of course, you have chickens. Those are the big time composters. Those are working machines, right? They're tilling the soil, turning everything together as they're fertilizing. Anything you bring as far as organic materials or kitchen scraps from your kitchen, they will eat the whole thing, tear to pieces. And they will also eat all kinds of undesirable seeds away from your compost pile, or even pest control, minor bugs, small bugs that you don't want. They are not considered beneficial, but detrimental to your garden, pests and all that good stuff. Once that material is ready, you can either move the chickens away and plant right in place, or you can just scrape all the material and take the high quality compost into your planting areas. Whew, next. Yes, we made it. We made it. I know it sounded like a little bit of a rush. I am here to answer any questions that you may have, but keep in mind that soil always will be the foundation, whereas composting